So Lian have just updated their very popular Galahad AIO. It's now called the Galahad 2 Trinity, and it comes in 3 different versions. There's the standard Galahad 2 Trinity, which is the one that I don't have, and this is their base version with standard ARGB fans. I say standard, they're not really standard in the fact that they've got some hidden connectors between the fans connecting them up, and you're now able to connect the fans directly up to the pump for using Lian's L connect to not only control the fan speeds, but also adjust the ARGB. We've also got the SL Infinity version, and it comes, as you would expect with the name, with Lian's SL Infinity uni fans on the radiator, and I think this is probably going to be the best looking one. And then we've got the performance model. It comes with standard black fans. There's no ARGB on it out of the box, so we can add some, and I'll show you that later on. And these really aren't standard fans. They are high performance fans that can run incredibly quickly, giving you outstanding airflow and static pressure. It's got a bigger, thicker radiator, and it's got a faster pump. So everything about this AIO is set up to give you the best possible cooling that you can get out of a box. So in terms of the pricing, I'll put a slide up on the screen talking you through the pricing. All 3 of the models are available in black and white. The base model and also the SL Infinity model are also available in 240 and 360 versions, where the performance model is just available in a 360 version. I'm planning on doing a build guide using the SL Infinity version fairly shortly, and in that video I'll cover all the setup of this model. So today I want to focus purely on the performance model. What I'm going to be doing is unboxing it, pointing out all the new features and improvements that Lian have made. I'll show you how to install it, we'll do some thermal testing, and then we'll answer the question if this should be your next AIO and does it live up to the performance name. So before we actually open the box, I want to take a look at the specs. We've got the performance version here and the SL Infinity version at the bottom. And really you have to look at these to see what makes the performance version so special. So looking at the radiator, we can see that it's actually 10 millimeters wider and 5 millimeters thicker compared to the SL Infinity. If we go down and take a look at our fan speeds, we can see that the SL Infinity, it goes between 200 and 2150 revs per minute. The performance version, the fans have 2 different speeds. There's a low and high speed, and there's a button you can adjust between them. I'll show you this later on. So in the low speed, it's very similar, 200 to 2300, whereas we have the option to increase it up to high speed between 200 and 3000 revs per minute, compared to up to 2150 with the SL Infinity. If we take a look at the airflow, the SL Infinity is giving us 61.3 CFM, whereas the performance version in the low speed, it's even above that, 81.9, but we can turn it up to high speed and get a whopping 109.6. In terms of static pressure, the low setting in the performance version is 4.15 millimeters of water, going up to 6.99, absolutely massive in the high setting. And if you compare that to the SL Infinity, we can see that here we're only getting 2.66 millimeters of water. In terms of noise levels, this one, the fan noise, is going to give you up to 29 decibels. Over on the performance version, it depends which setting. We're similar, 29 decibels in the low setting. So in the low setting, we're getting improved benefits in terms of performance with no extra noise. But if we turn it up to the high setting, the noise levels do shoot up quite a bit. We're up to 38.1, but that's bringing a whole load of extra performance. So I can't see the spec here in terms of the pump, but I can certainly point it out to you. The SL Infinity and also the standard Trinity version, the pump is limited to 3200 revs per minute, where we've got an extra 1000 revs per minute up to 4200 revs per minute with the performance version. So taking the AIO out of the box, you can see a simple and easy improvement Lian have made. The fans are now pre-installed on the radiator, which is really going to simplify the installation process. And for the life of me, I can't understand why more manufacturers don't do this. So before we move on to focus just on the performance version, I thought it was worth doing a side-by-side comparison between the performance and the SL Infinity version. And the standard Trinity version will have the same dimensions as the SL Infinity. So you can see just how much bigger this performance version is. As we mentioned, we've got an extra 5 millimeters of thickness on the radiator, And these are 28mm thick fans, whereas these are 25mm thick fans. So you have got quite a big radiator and fan setup here. So important to check the compatibility in the case you're planning on using it in. So you can see the radiator on the performance model is also a little bit wider as well. So if I zoom in and give you a closer look at the radiator, you'll see it's not just a slightly bigger radiator. We've got a double wave fin design here on the performance model compared to the SL Infinity, which is going to have the same radiator design as the standard Trinity version. So this is designed to increase the surface area, giving better cooling potential. So you can see we've got a slightly different pump design on the performance version. It is taller with a square base compared to the slightly smaller and rounded base on the SL Infinity and also the standard Trinity version of the pump. And this is going to give you an extra 1000 revs per minute on your pump speed. Lian have also made significant improvements to the pump with the second version of the Galahad AIO. The skiv fins and the copper plate have increased spacing to prevent the buildup of debris over time. And the copper plate seal has also been revised with straightened pathways, reducing turbulence and increasing the water flow. And the impeller in the performance version has had a redesign with an increase in size from 31.4mm up to 36mm. The tubes in the AIO are now thicker, up at 7mm compared to 5.8mm with the previous version of the AIO, which should give us less resistance to flow. So another nice improvement, we've now got 45-degree rotary fittings on the radiator, and we can simply twist these into whatever position we need them for the build. And in terms of keeping our tubes organised, this should be a little bit easier as well. We've now got a leather strap included with the AIO, which we can simply pop onto place, and that is then going to keep our tubes nicely organised. So I want to take a closer look at our pump, and while the fans don't have any ARGB on it, the pump certainly makes up for it by having ARGB in the 3 different options. So out of the box you've got the Duo Infinity option here, and it is rotatable, so we can rotate this round by 90 degrees. So you're going to be able to have the logo up the right way depending on how you decide to install this in the case. To remove this, we just need to tilt it round to the middle, and this is going to simply pull off. We've then got 2 options to replace it, and we need to start off by replacing the middle part. So for dazzle mode, we're going to install this little plate here, and there's cutouts in the middle that we can push this into and then twist round to secure it into place. We've then got this outer cover, and you can see there's a larger bit over towards me and a larger cutout here. So it's just a matter of lining it up with a cutout, and then once it's in place, twisting round to secure it. So this is going to give the dazzle effect where everything is going to light up with ARGB. And then for the sinkhole option, the first thing we need to do is add this infinity mirror into the middle and rotate it round to lock it in place. And then we can set the same outer bit on. And rotate it round. And that's then going to give us the sinkhole effect with the lighting around the outside and the infinity mirror in the middle. And I'll show you what all these look like later on in the video. Okay, next thing to do is take a look at the connections coming from our pump. So first of all, we've got a SATA power connector, which we're going to need to plug into a SATA cable coming from our power supply. We've got a USB 2.0 connector, and we're going to need to plug that into USB 2.0 header on the motherboard. And this is going to allow us to connect everything up to Lian Li's L-Connect. And that is going to allow us to adjust the speed and adjust the lighting effects. The final connector is a 4-pin PWM connector, and we're going to plug that into our CPU pump header. We've also got the option to plug in 2 additional cables to the pump. The one furthest away from the tubes is for ARGB, and we get this additional cable included with the AIO. If you look at the cable, you'll notice there's a little arrow on it, and the arrow is to go up the way towards the top. So we can plug it into place. And on the other end of this cable, we've got a 3-pin 5-volt ARGB cable. And the idea behind this is going to allow you to use motherboard sync to connect the lighting up on the pump with your motherboard and allow your motherboard software to control the lighting. So this is an optional cable. If you're going to use Lian Li's L-Connect to control the lighting, there's no need to plug this cable in. But I'll leave it plugged in today to show you what it looks like when it's installed, because you're going to have an extra cable running from your pump, which may look untidy. But if I was installing this in my own build, I wouldn't plug this cable in, and I would just use the L-Connect to control not only the speed of everything, but also to control the lighting. So rotate the pump round. Now nearest the tubes we've got this other connector. It's labelled with this double cable symbol, and in the case accessory box we get another double cable. Again, this is a little arrow on it, and we're going to want to install it with the arrow facing up the way. So it's just a matter of lining things up, and then we can push the connector into place. So taking a look at the two ends of the cables, first of all we've got this 4-pin PWM header. And the idea behind this is you have the option then of plugging the fan cables directly into here, and you're going to be able to use Lian Li's LConnect software to adjust the speed of the fans on the radiator. Now this is completely optional. The other thing that you can do is not plug this cable in at all and plug your fans directly into your CPU fan header and use your motherboard software to control them. But if you want Lian Li's LConnect to control them, you can plug them into here, and then because this pump is connected up with a USB cable, you're going to be able to adjust the speed of the fans on the radiator and the pump using Lian Li's LConnect software. And on the other end of this cable, we've got a standard 3-pin 5-volt ARGB header. Now the idea behind this is obviously we don't need this for our fans because they don't have any ARGB on it. But if you get the standard version of the Trinity AIO, where the fans do have ARGB on it, and the idea is you're going to be able to plug the fans into this cable, and as well as using Lian Li's LConnect to adjust the speed of the fans, you're also then going to be able to adjust the lighting using Lian Li's LConnect. Alternatively, what you could do is plug another ARGB device into here, and LConnect is then going to be able to adjust the effects on it. And you've got the option of using the standard 3-pin 5-volt ARGB header, or if we pull things along here, we can pull off here, and we've got a lot of other ARGB devices which will plug directly into this connector here. So for our build, this is a completely optional cable as well. If you are very happy for your motherboard to control the speed of the fans, there is no need to plug this cable in. But again, I'm going to leave all the cables plugged in to show you what it looks like and to show you what the options are in Lian Li's LConnect. So we've got two cables coming from our fans. The first is a 4-pin PWM connector, and as we've mentioned, there's two options for this. We can plug this directly into our CPU fan header and use our motherboard's fan curves to control the fans on the radiator. Or the other option is we can use that special additional cable plugging into our pump, plug this into here and use Lian Li's LConnect to control the fans. The other cable is the little button that we're going to use to adjust the fan speed. So remember when I showed you the specs in the box, we had the two different options depending on whether the fans were set on the low or the high setting for their maximum speed. So this is where we adjust it. We have this little slider here. At the moment it's set to low. If we push the slider over towards high, it's then going to set it on the high setting and the fans are going to spin at their maximum speed. That's going to give us improved airflow, it's going to give us improved static pressure, but also quite a bit more noise. So I'll be testing both of these settings later on. So you might think these are Lian Li Uni fans because they're all connected up together and we've only got one cable from it, but they aren't. They're actually standard fans connected up with cables hidden behind these front panels. So we'll remove the front panels to give you a look at this. It's just a matter of getting your nail in behind here and then you're able to pull the connectors off. So you can see our fans have two connectors, one on each side, and we've got our cables here running along, connecting them all up, hidden behind the front panels. So one of the things you may decide is you will want this PWM cable coming out this end, you want it coming out this end. That's not a problem. You can simply unclip it from here, move it over to the other end and clip it into place. So you might be thinking, rather than add the connector to the other end of the fans, can I actually move it to the back of the fans? So we'll go ahead and remove one of these panels. And you can see the answer to that question is no. There's no connectors on this side of the fan, so the connecting cable is going to have to go on this side only. So if you want to add a little bit of bling to your fans, you can use the same ARGB side panels that go onto the Lian Li P28 Uni fans. And I've made a video on those fans, including connecting these panels up, and I'll put a link to that in the description. So these panels simply are going to push onto the fans exactly the same way, and that's going to allow you to add a little bit of ARGB to the fans if you want. So you're planning to install the AIO with an Intel motherboard. There's two different backplates. We've got this one for LGA 1200, and there's this one here if you're going to be installing on an LGA 1700 motherboard, which is the latest standard. So we've got two little bits of adhesive here we can pull off, and then all we would need to do is line the backplate up with the holes in the back of the motherboard, and that's then going to stick here. Then we need to put one of these little spacers onto each corner. So out of the box, the AIO comes with the Intel bracket on it, and there's one thing we need to adjust depending on whether we want to install this in an LGA 1200 or LGA 1700 socket. If you're installing an LGA 1200 socket, you want these pins pushed all the way in as far as they go. If, like we've got an LGA 1700 motherboard, you want to pull the pins to the outer setting. So we can just pull all these to the outer setting. And that's then going to line up with the backplate we have fitted to the motherboard. So we would obviously need to install our thermal paste on the cold plate, and I'll show you that in a minute because I'm going to be installing this on an AMD motherboard, so I'm not going to do it at this stage. So then after installing our thermal paste, we would simply line this up with the backplate and then screw it into place. The thumb screws are already attached to the AIO. So I'm going to be installing this in an AMD motherboard, so that I need to remove the Intel brackets. So it's just a simple matter of pulling the brackets up and pushing this one down to remove them. We've then got our AMD brackets, so we can go ahead and push these into place. And then it's just a good idea to unscrew the thumb screws on each end so the brackets are ready to fit onto our motherboard. And this is compatible with both AM4 and AM5 sockets, and we don't need any additional backplate or bracket. It's going to clip onto our stock motherboard clips. In the box for the AIO, we get these little plastic stickers which are going to help us to apply our thermal paste. So we can remove the plastic sticker. So what we need to do now is add the plastic sticker to the middle of the cold plate. So next we can take some of the thermal paste that comes with the AIO and put it into place. And then we can spread the thermal paste using the included tool. Okay, so that's the thermal paste nicely spread. We can then remove this bit of plastic. And then we should have the perfect amount and spread of thermal paste. Now you can see how this is elongated, and it's elongated in the right orientation for our CPU because we're going to be installing this at the top and at the bottom, and it's elongated in this orientation. If, for example, you were installing this on an Intel motherboard and you wanted to install the pump this way around, this would be the wrong orientation for the thermal paste, so it is important when applying the plastic you put it in the right orientation. So the case I'm using has a removable radiator bracket, so I'm going to be able to install it outside the case. If your case doesn't, you're just going to have to line the radiator up with where you want to install it in the case. And then we're going to secure the radiator to the bracket using the short radiator screws. Then we can return our AIO to the case and secure it into place. So we've only got one tube coming out the left of the AIO, so I'm just going to wrap this under our AMD bracket, and then I'm just going to put the top clip over the top bracket. Okay, so that's our top clip on. I'm just going to lower the bracket down and try and get the bottom clip on. Okay, so that's the bottom clip on now. So I'm just going to tighten up the thumb screws. And we'll just give them a final turn with a screwdriver. Next I'm going to pass all the cables through to the back of the case. I'm then going to bring the PWM cable coming from the pump back through and get it plugged into our pump header on the motherboard. And there's a USB 2.0 header down at the bottom of the motherboard to plug the USB cable coming from the pump into. We've got two ARGB headers at the top of the motherboard, so we can plug the optional ARGB cable coming from the pump into the motherboard. Remember, this cable is optional. You only need to plug this in if you want your motherboard software to control the lighting on the pump. We've then got the SATA cable coming from our pump to plug into a SATA power cable coming from our power supply. The last cable to plug in is this 4-pin PWM cable coming from the fans on the radiator. Again, two options for this. We can plug this into our CPU fan header to allow our motherboard to control the fan speeds, or we can plug it into this double splitter cable coming from our pump to allow Lian L connect to adjust the fan speeds. Now this is a double splitter cable, as I showed you. The ARGB one we don't need to plug into anything, but if we did have an additional device we wanted L connect to control, we could plug it into this header. We can then add that other strap to the tubes and remove the plastic protection from the pump. Okay, so that's what all the cabling looks like running up towards the top of the motherboard. It's mostly all routed up through here and to here. I think having this little back cable tucked in through the bracket does help tidy it up a little bit. And because the motherboard is black on this particular bit, the cables blend in quite nicely with it. And obviously you could add a couple of cable ties to help tidy the cables as well. Okay, so I'll pump a graphics card into the system, and then we'll load up Lian L Connect and take a closer look at the AIO. So we go ahead and open Lian L Connect. We can see our system information. And our Galahad 2 Trinity Performance AIO is showing up at the side, so we'll go ahead and click on it. So we can see our AIO here. We've got our current CPU temperature, the speed our fans are currently running at, and they're running in the quiet profile. Our pump's also in the quiet profile, and this is our current pump speed. We're currently set to the dual infinity, which is the right setting for what we've got currently installed in our AIO at the moment. And we're able to adjust our lighting effects from down here. So currently we're on a rainbow, and we've got our speed and our brightness here that we can adjust, as well as the direction. Up here we've got our extended ARGB header. So this is the other end of the splitter cable that we haven't actually plugged anything into. If you get the base version of the AIO, you are going to be able to plug your ARGB fans into this cable and then adjust them here. So we can adjust the whole of the lighting on the pump by picking a particular effect that we want from here. Or alternatively, we can adjust individual components, the middle and the outside, because we do have two lighting rings in the AIO pump. So we go to the middle. It's currently set to static color. If we want, we can have a more dynamic effect, but I'm happy with static color. Let's change it to blue and paint it into place. We then need to go to the outside, and again, I think I'll have this as a pink. Select it, and then you'll notice our AIO has changed to reflect these colors. If you prefer, you can change the whole thing in one go. So there's currently rainbow. Let's go in and pick something else. Let's go for runway, and it's going to change over to show that effect. So we'll go back over to rainbow. Now what we can do is if we change what we've actually installed on it, we need to select the option here. So let's show you dazzle mode. And then that's what dazzle mode looks like, currently set to rainbow. If we want to go with a static color, we can do that as well. So let's go, for example, a static red and paint it into place. And then the last one I want to show you is the sinkhole. And that's what it looks like currently set to red. Again, I'll put it back to rainbow. I think this is probably my favorite. Okay, so I think that's everything I want to show you with the lighting. Now I want to show you how to adjust the fan and pump profiles. We can make some simple adjustments here, but with more controls over here. So at the moment, you can see our current fan speed, it's on the quiet profile, and our pump speed also on the quiet profile. So we can adjust our pump speed. What we can do, we pick standard here and click on apply. The pump speed will increase, and you're going to be able to see it increasing here. And if we want to put it up to high, we can do that as well. And the other thing that we can do is sync up with our motherboard if we prefer, although we're going to have much better control using Lian's L-Connect. We can also adjust our fan profile too. So at the moment we're on the quiet profile. Again, if we want to pick the standard profile, click apply. You'll notice that our fan speed will increase. We have the option of the high profile, making our own profile, or running the fans at full speed. So let's put them on to full speed. And you'll notice our fan speed will increase. So I have told you that our fans will actually run faster than this. The reason they're only running at this maximum speed is because I currently have the little slider coming from the fans and the radiator set to low. So if I go ahead and flip it over to high now, I can hear the fans increasing in the background, and then you'll notice the speed will go up to the maximum speed. So this is obviously pretty noisy. So what I think I'm going to do is just go with a standard profile on the fans. And again, this is still pretty noisy at idle. So I'm going to flip the switch back down to low. And you'll notice our fan speed should drop down dramatically. And in terms of our pump speed, again, I'm going to go for the standard profile and click on apply. I think this is going to be the starting point for the thermal testing. So we've got our fan and pump running on the standard profile, the slider switch for the fans set to the low setting. And I've got all the fans in the motherboard running off the standard fan curves reacting to the CPU temperature. 6 of the fans are Lian's P28 Unifans, and they're running in the middle setting. The rear fan's a NOCTE fan, and again it's just reacting to the standard fan curve. Take a look at the temperatures with those settings. Our Ryzen 9 7900X idled at 41 degrees and reached a maximum of 87 degrees during a 10-minute IDA 64 stability test, with all components in the system being stressed. The next thing I wanted to test was increasing the pump speed from the standard setting of 3200 revs per minute up to its maximum of 4200 revs per minute. This dropped our CPU temperature by 1 degree at idle and 2 degrees under load without any additional noise. Next thing to test was leaving the pump running at its maximum setting. I flipped the speed controller on the fans from low to high, leaving the fans running in the standard profile. This didn't really significantly change our CPU temperatures. They went up by 1 degree at idle and came down by 1 degree under load. Although it did bring significantly more noise, with 5 decibels extra noise at idle and 3 decibels extra noise under load. So during the last stress test, the fans were running at 2,580 revs per minute under load. They can run up to a maximum of 3,000. So what I did was put the fans to full speed and reran the thermal testing. Comparing this to our best configuration so far, where the fans were running in the low speed setting on the standard fan profile, this didn't give us any benefit in terms of temperatures, and actually our CPU temperature under load was 1 degree hotter. In terms of noise levels, this wasn't a great idea. The idle noise increased by 15 decibels and the noise under load increased by 6 decibels. You might be wondering if our radiator at the top of the case set to exhaust was getting enough airflow, so what I did was I set all our case fans to 100% and the Lian P28 uni fans are running in their highest speed setting. So doing this, our CPU temperature under load dropped down by 2 degrees, but this came at the expense of 4 decibels extra noise both at idle and under load. So the final test I want to do with the performance version of the AIO was setting it to intake at the top. The side fans in the case I then switched to exhaust. I matched the pump and fan settings to our best configuration so far. That was with the pump running at 100% and the fans running on the standard fan curves. And all the case fans were put back to the standard fan curves as well. Surprisingly, with the AIO set to intake, our temperatures were actually worse than we had it set to exhaust, but this was useful information to have because we now had the best configuration to compare with the other AIOs. So the Galahad 2 Trinity SL Infinity set up exactly the same way as the performance version. Our CPU idled 4 degrees hotter and it was 3 degrees hotter under load. The idle noise was actually 3 degrees louder with the SL Infinity version of the AIO, but there was no difference to the noise levels under load. So comparing this to the Deepcool LT720, which I've found to be an outstanding AIO, giving me great thermals in most of the builds I put it into, the only slight difference was I wasn't able to run this obviously in the fan curves in Lian Li's L Connect, and we ran off the standard motherboard fan curves. So comparing this to the performance version of the AIO, we had exactly the same idle temperatures, but our CPU temperature under load with the Deepcool AIO was higher by 4 degrees. In terms of noise levels, the Galahad 2 Trinity Performance was the winner here again, being quieter by 2 decibels at idle and 4 decibels under load. Comparing the Deepcool AIO to the Galahad 2 Trinity SL Infinity, our idle temperature was better by 4 degrees with the Deepcool AIO, although the Galahad was the winner by 1 degree under load. Noise levels were a little bit mixed. The Deepcool was slightly quieter at idle by 1 decibel, whereas the SL Infinity version of the Galahad was quieter under load by 4 decibels. So summarising all that thermal testing, the Galahad 2 Trinity Performance AIO seems to be a really solid CPU killer. Having that benefit to increase the pump speed up to 4,200 revs per minute does seem to give you a benefit in reducing your CPU temperatures without causing any extra noise. Increasing the fan speeds up to that higher setting and then increasing them even further, it brought marginal cooling benefits, but really absolutely massive increase in noise levels in the system and with the CPU that I tested with. So I wouldn't certainly do that in my own system. It did sound like I had a plane ready to take off beside me when I had everything turned up to its max settings, and we weren't really getting any significant benefit to the temperatures with it. Where I actually think you're probably going to get the most benefit from this AIO is going the other way and turning the fan speeds down even further and turning the pump speed down so you can barely hear this thing, and I think it'll do a pretty good job of cooling. But I've done so much thermal testing today, that would be some testing for another day. So I think this is a really solid CPU cooler. I think the fans look really good. And just be careful if you are planning on installing this in your case. It is a really big set of radiator and fans, so make sure it is going to fit and pay close attention to the specs that you might otherwise not pay that much attention to. So I think I would be very happy to have this in my build, and I think the color effects on the pump block look absolutely brilliant as well. So I have mentioned I'm going to be covering the SL Infinity version of the AIO in a full step-by-step build guide. I'll show you how to install it in that video. There is a few slight differences with it, but I have given you a sneak peek at the temperatures today, and they are really, really good. Obviously not as good as the performance version, but compared to the Deepcool AIO, which has been one of my favourites, it does outperform it under load, giving better CPU temperatures at lower noise levels. So these AIOs that Lian Li have brought out seem to be really solid, I think you're going to be seeing them in quite a few of my builds going forward. So hopefully you have enjoyed this review. If you have, please remember to give me a thumbs up. And if you're not currently subscribed to the channel, please hit the subscribe button as well. Thanks for watching.